Enter if you dare. This is Paranormal M, your guide to the world's most haunted and unexplainable phenomena. Each episode reveals a new layer of darkness, mystery, and spine-tingling truth. Subscribe and tap the bell now. The supernatural is waiting to meet you. My annoying friend Jeffrey. So, I've experienced a lot of paranormal stuff throughout my life. I definitely want to tell some of my other experiences in the future. But this one in particular has been kind of a big deal with me, because of the horror behind it and how bizarre my childlike reaction was to it. When I was maybe 11 years old, I was sitting on a bench in the back porch just enjoying some time alone. I was watching a little rabbit that was hopping around in the grass. Then something in the corner of my eye catches my attention. It's this small, goopy red creature. It looks like it's made out of guts with a massive green cat-looking eye. Now, around this time, I had a very active imagination. Spent a lot of my time in an imaginary world trying to escape all the things I hated about my life. And some of those things I imagined were pretty messed up and creepy. I really enjoyed creepy. So when I saw this little guy, I wasn't jumping up screaming or anything. My first assumption was that I'd leveled up my visualization imaginary friends. Now I could create and conjure them without even thinking about it. Can't remember the conversation verbatim, but he expressed disappointment that I wasn't startled. Explained to me that his hobby was scaring little kids. He looked at the rabbit in the yard and, using his mind, made the rabbit explode from the inside out. Again, I was content to think I was daydreaming, even though it was a little bit different than my preferred imaginary game. I was just playing along. I talked to him a little bit and told him that he couldn't scare me, so he needed not waste his time. Told him that I know the rabbit wasn't real, but we can be friends anyway, and I asked him his name. He said I can call him Jeffrey, because I wouldn't be able to pronounce his real name. I shrugged and went inside. The next day, my mom goes to work in the yard. She finds the dead rabbit. She's horrified. It's a bloody mess covered in buzzing flies and other bugs. She makes a big deal about it because she has to clean it. Having the rabbit confirmed dead by another person is perplexing me. I start to question the order of events. Maybe when I saw it, it was already dead and I was just imagining seeing it prance around. Jeffrey starts coming around at night when I'm trying to sleep. He thumps on the bottom of the bed before I even have the chance to fall asleep. Or some nights he makes sickly growls from across the room, waking me up. I get mad at him for being so annoying and throw pillows at him and kind of try to mock his voice. After a few nights, I'm irritated enough to complain about him. I never really talked about my imaginary friends to anyone, though my family was aware of them because they would hear me talking to them all the time. I had control over when I saw my other friends. They never annoyed me, so I had nothing to complain about. I tell my little brother and older sister about them. I'm aware my brother is more easily afraid, and I tell him not to let Jeffrey scare him. It never hurt me. The most he'd done was kill a rabbit, so I prayed him off as harmless. And besides, I was still 90% sure he was purely imaginary. My brother doesn't take kindly to being made aware of Jeffrey at all, despite that statement. He refuses to sleep in his own bedroom for a while, opting to sleep with the parents instead. But one day when he goes into his bedroom to play video games, sitting on his twin-sized bed, he's suddenly hurled up a couple of feet, along with the mattress. He freezes, he's still and terrified, and it happens again. I'm minding my business in another room when he runs up to me, white as a ghost, to demand I not prank him like this, because he's mortified. But he thinks on it a minute and realizes that I couldn't have done such a prank, even if I were in the room with him. His bed frame only lifts 5 inches off the ground, and he wouldn't have the muscle to throw everything up like that. I kinda laugh while I watch him go through all these realizations and see how terrified he is. When he starts shaking, I just remind him that he's giving Jeffrey what he wanted, and that if he has too much fun, he'll probably come back for more. But what do I know? He hasn't left me the hell alone. I feel a little relieved to know he's not just imaginary, so maybe I'm not stuck with him in my head for the rest of my life. Sometime within a few days after that, I have a friend spend the night. We're getting ready to sleep in my brother's room because it doubles as a guest room. Has 2 matching twin beds and a hotel room setup. I explained to my friend what happened to my little brother. Let her know that we might get a visit tonight, so don't freak out, because Jeffrey is actually harmless and stupid. As if to retaliate, he appears. I see him sliming around under her bed, and I let her know. Her mattress bounces up in the air. I'm laughing because how is this supposed to scare us? Then my bed bounces up, and we're giggling, grasping the sides of our mattresses while they bounce more and more violently. They're coming off their frames. I remember distinctly that this was very fun. I remember our giggling in the dark and the slamming sounds of the mattresses falling back down. I remember us finally losing our grips and tumbling onto the floor and the mattresses falling over us. Then I remember our giggles dying out when he leaves. He basically gives up without a word. We express a little disappointment that it ended so soon. I expect him to come back, but he never does. That night was the last encounter I had with Jeffrey. Nobody I knew encountered him again either. Some years later, when I was 17 or 18, I reconnected with a friend who stayed the night. We went out to a lake to catch up, drank some beer, smoked some cigarettes, reminisced. At one point, I gathered up the courage to ask her if she remembers Jeffrey in the beds because I wasn't so sure if I imagined that night. Before I can clarify what I'm talking about, she goes wide-eyed and exclaims, "Oh my God, that really happened?" And almost simultaneously, we're shouting about how we thought that it was a dream and how in retrospect it was actually really horrifying and why the hell were we laughing? So I bring it up to my brother, and he gets mad at me going, "Oh my God, why did you have to bring that up? I won't be able to sleep tonight." And to this day, he thinks I have some untapped ability to bring imaginary friends to life. Anyway, I'm 28 now, and I just wonder sometimes if anybody else has ever met Jeffrey, or if this was just some weird situation where 3 people all imagine the same thing. Weird feeling I had. I had a really weird feeling while driving home today. Quick context. My grandfather recently passed away, and his death had been fresh on my family. Not only my family, but my mind as well during this time. I was hanging out with my cousin for dinner. On the ride back to my house, I was on the phone with her while we're just talking about weird events and how my grandfather saw spirits or hallucinations. And visions right before he passed, including seeing my late grandmother sitting next to him, and a hooded figure standing behind my dad just hours before. On the car ride, we're talking about how she had spoken to a person who was reading her and giving her life advice. And at some point randomly in the ride, I got this really weird feeling I've never felt before. It was strange. My car's brake alert and proximity sensor went off right before I had the weird feeling. There was no car or object in front of me. For the rest of the ride back, this feeling kind of persisted, and I legit interrupted my cousin halfway through her story to let her know the weird vibe I had. It felt as if there was a cold presence near me. I felt chills down my back and kind of anxious. I don't really know how to describe it. I've been nervous and I've been scared before, and this was a different feeling altogether. Maybe it was just paranoia from all the events together and stress hitting at once. But I genuinely tried to sober myself and see the logic. But the feeling just persisted. I'm not really religious, but when I got home, I lit a candle in front of a small temple at my house. Never felt a wave of relief wash over me faster. Girl in red dress. I dreamt of a girl in a red dress once. In the dream, she was following me. She was following me as I walked down a dark street toward the only open store with lights. While in the store, I realized she did not dare to enter, and I saw another girl in a white dress skipping toward me. She held my hand and led me out, but I told her she, the girl in the red dress, wants me dead, because that's the feeling I was getting from her. She reassured me and led me out of the store. As expected, the girl in the red dress followed us, but at a wider distance. The girl in white turned toward the red dress girl and shouted at her, saying that she's not yours. She points at me. The red dress girl vanished, and I woke up soon after. A few weeks later, I actually forgot about this dream. I'm chatting with my friends in bed, and I did feel uneasy soon after, but never paid much attention to it, until I turned and the shock of my life because a girl in red was standing there. She promptly vanished into thin air. Since then, I felt somebody was close to me, always watching. Kind of feels like I'm being marked for something. Paranormal encounter. Please tell me what you think this creature might have been. This happened when I was around the age of 13 or 14. I'm 28 now. For context, my family lived in northern Maryland in a very rural area. Each town is maybe 10 or 20 minutes apart from each other. In between are many densely wooded areas and farmlands. They stretch for miles. About an hour and a half away from Baltimore and 10 minutes from the Pennsylvania line. On this night, my family, my mother, younger brother, and, well, we're on our way home from my grandma's house. She lived about 20 minutes from our house in town. And I say in town because where we live, there's no shopping centers, no grocery stores, no gas stations. No police or fire stations. There really isn't anything besides farms, churches, and one elementary school. It's literally in the middle of a cornfield. My brother and I went to school in the same town where she lived. We'd often walk to her house after school. We had dinner at her house this evening, then made our way home as we did many nights previously. If I remember correctly, this was a school night. Therefore, our travel up the mountain was not too late into the evening. I think the sun had been set for just a couple of hours. To get to our house from my grandmother's, we took a winding 2-lane rural state road up the mountain. Many people use this route on their daily commute. This road is lined on both sides with thick woods while following alongside a creek and a railway majority of the way. To the right side of this road is a steep incline of all hillside rocks, brush, and trees. The left side is a guardrail. It has a several-foot drop-off behind it with thick foliage, more trees, and the creek that runs alongside the road with the railway just beyond that. At night, the canopy of trees and surrounding foliage makes this particular route very dark. As we started into one of the last sharp bends, there stood a massive, all-black animal, resembling that of a canine walking on all fours down the center of the road about 2, maybe 3 yards ahead of us. It's not exactly uncommon to see wildlife along this stretch, mainly deer, raccoons, and possums. However, I've not seen anything canine-like wandering along this road before, and this animal looked much larger than a regular house pet. My mom slowed down immediately, thinking the animal might hear the vehicle approaching from behind or see the lights and run up the hillside. However, it did no such thing. As soon as the light shined on this creature, its head snapped around, staring right at our SUV. My mom drove a Chevrolet Trailblazer at the time, and as the headlight shined against this creature, it flashed the biggest, toothiest snarl I've ever seen. The jowls stretched back in a menacing grin, exposing its huge fang-like teeth. The teeth were bright white, almost glistening from the shine of the headlights. Its wolf-like ears were pinned back against its head. I could see the hackles on the back of its neck standing erect. The shoulders stood broad and strong in an aggressive, ready-to-strike stance. The eyes had a yellow hue and expressed evil intentions. Had the face of a wolf, but the body and stature of a bear. The body of this creature was enormous, like nothing I'd ever seen before. The body and legs were long and lanky, but oddly muscular. Something almost otherworldly. Within seconds of the creature flashing its toothy snarl in our direction, it ran directly toward us. My mom gasped, "Oh my God!" while simultaneously jerking the steering wheel quickly to the right, trying to avoid this thing that was charging toward us. The front and back tires on the right side rumbled in the dirt and the gravel as the SUV was jerked from the roadway. My brother in the back seat flung himself forward, grabbing the back of the headrest in front of him while letting out a terrified and almost deafening shriek. As the vehicle rumbled off the asphalt, the creature was now directly in front of us. The back of the beast with jet black fur stood about 6 inches above the front end of my mom's Trailblazer. In a matter of seconds, she jerked the SUV back into the roadway and we continued around the bend. I was in the passenger seat and wide-eyed and stunned, my mom's hands white-knuckling the steering wheel as she stared out the windshield in disbelief. It was silent now. My brother broke the silence by asking, "What was that?" "I think it hit us," my mom replied. The three of us decided to go back and see if it was still there, maybe laying on the side of the road. My mom and I had no idea what we had just seen. My brother, being in the back seat, didn't get the best look at it. We turned the car around in the next area possible, drove by slowly as we could. The creature was nowhere to be seen. It was like it had vanished. When we arrived home, my mom checked the left front corner of the Trailblazer for any sign of damage. She swore the thing had run into us as she was trying her best to avoid it, but there was nothing. No dents, no dings, no hair, nothing where this thing would have made an impact. To this day, my mom and I still talk about this night. It's the strangest thing I've ever encountered. Does anyone have any idea what this thing might have been? Pet paranormal experiences. I think I have only had one myself. My dog Diesel passed away at only 5 years old unexpectedly in 2008. He was a mutt, a mix between a Rottweiler, a German Shepherd, a Chow, and a Golden Retriever. He was a beautiful dog, and to this day, still one of the best dogs I've ever had. He was truly my best friend. I'll only go into the night he passed away a little. It was honestly very dramatic, and even writing this, I have tears welling up in my eyes. To keep it short, we found him laying under a rose bush in the side of our house, a place he had never gone to lay before. He wasn't breathing and not moving. I'll never forget the scream my mom let out when she and I found him. We took him to get an autopsy performed. That was because there was no signs of his body of physical damage. We were ultimately told he had a spleen torsion, which caused his spleen to rupture. His passing was extremely hard for me, really for the whole family. Enough backstory onto the experience. I think it was a few weeks after Diesel's passing. I was sleeping, and I had what I think was a dream, but it was so real I just don't know. And in this dream, I awoke to Diesel standing in the doorway of my room. I remember saying, "Diesel, is that you?" got out of bed and ran to him, fell to my knees, and hugged him around his neck. His tail was wagging. Behind him was an extremely bright white light, almost blinding, but it was beautiful. I remember saying, "Wow, that's dramatic." I shit you not, that's really what I said. Literally could have been staring right into heaven at that moment. That was the only thing I could say. Diesel was only there for a short time, maybe only a minute or two before he disappeared, and I woke back up in my bed with my alarm clock going off. I wholeheartedly felt like it was real. I mean, how often do people remember their dreams after they wake up even years later? I really feel like he came to me that night. He wanted me to know that he was okay. Creepy doppelganger incident. These are two eerily similar doppelganger experiences. This post isn't a piece of fiction. I was as perplexed as you were when it occurred. My earliest encounter occurred around 3 or 4 years ago. I decided to stay with my aunt, and her house was big with 3 baths and various rooms. I was on the 2nd floor alone when everything happened. So, I was working on a video with my youthful step-aunt appeared. I followed her into a room, excited to show her what I had done with my phone. My younger cousin was also in her arms. Both of them were female. She wasn't in the room when I walked in. I turned behind the door, thinking she was playing a joke on me. Nobody was present. I dashed downstairs to find her, but she claimed she had not gone upstairs at all. It was a scary experience, so I stayed downstairs. I had my following incident about 2 or 3 years ago. I'm upstairs in the house by myself once more. My family's home wasn't substantial. My elder sister then arrived, bearing our little sister. I was probably too lazy to fetch something, so I called her from across the room. Before exiting the room, she walked up to the mirror and remained there, still, without responding to me. I followed her out of the room as she went in a slow pace. She was nowhere to be found. I dashed downstairs once again where my elder sister was showering. My younger sister was downstairs. They were playing with her toys. I was creeped out once more and stayed downstairs. Numerous parallels between these two situations made them seem like falsehoods and fables. I was alone upstairs in a house that belonged to a relative. The people that came upstairs were all women, and one of them was holding a female toddler. Both rooms had a bed with a mirror pointing straight in the direction of the bed. Happened in the afternoon, and if it's of any use, here are some things to consider. My aunt kept my grandfather's ashes in a container at my aunt's house. In the second encounter, the room I was in had 2 Santo Nino idols that looked a lot like Santo Nino de Atocha and Divine Nino. What does all of this mean? Please respond promptly. Story. The idea of the paranormal is a fickle thing in my mind. Once something that I could not refute as reality turned into something that was at best dubious. It's always stuck around in the back of my head one way or another. As a child, cartoons like Scooby-Doo and tales like those from Haunted Canada left me awake at night, dreading the thought that some horrible apparition from aeons past might be watching me from the darkest corners of my room, which only the light could chase away. As I've grown older, the idea of a vampire in my closet or a mummy under my bed have faded into nothing but mere comical ideas. Ghosts, however, they've not been given the same treatment by my mind. The older I got, too, the more I found myself rolling my eyes at the idea of the supernatural. Not every encounter piqued my interest anymore. Fake photos, corny stories, and bad actors tainted my once sure mind that ghosts could exist. But it's a thought I still can't shake, especially not after what I've experienced. I I live in a fairly small city in Canada, and I've lived here all my life. I've had the good fortune of never having to move, and the house I live in, well, it's watched me grow up and change just as I've watched it be painted new colors and given new amenities. I'm convinced that part of steadfast belief in the paranormal was when I was young came from experiences within this house. And there are many of those experiences which, no matter how I try and play off as misconceptions for me, I still can't really explain to this day. Beginning at a young age, I recall being terrified of my basement for starters. It's stereotypical, I know, but young me felt it was for a good reason. My crawlspace counted for at least 3/4 of that reason, being connected to the basement by the bottom of the stairs. It's a fairly large crawlspace with 2 rooms that, well, if you can even call them rooms, that can even be stood up without issue. At least if you're below 5'5" tall anyways. This crawlspace has basically been the home of several strange occurrences. From lights turning off when they shouldn't, the house has never had electrical problems by the way, to hearing footsteps in the room above it when I've been home alone. Oddities seem to rebound. Notably, the crawlspace door swung open seemingly of its own accord several times. One particularly haunting time when maybe I was 8, I was sitting in the rec room, the main space in our basement. In this room there's a couch, a coffee table, and in front of that table is the television. Sitting facing the television, the crawlspace door would be located in the wall to the right. That day I'm sitting on the coffee table while watching TV. That's when I heard the knob to the crawlspace door turn and whipped my head only to watch the door swing open on its own, slowly. I was of course horrified as this door needed to have the knob turned to be opened. Nobody was around me but me, and here I was having not only heard the knob move on its own, but then watching the door swing open to the pitch-black crawlspace seemingly all by itself. Needless to say, I ran toward the stairs near instantly, rushing past the crawlspace and scampering up to the brightly lit upstairs. My sister, who's close in age to me, also experienced similar occurrences with the crawlspace. In 2022, we had both been sitting on the couch behind the table watching TV. That's when the door opened on its own again, knob turning and everything. She heard and saw it too, and was equally confused and alarmed. None of my young age experiences were helped by my dreams either, since one that recurred frequently was of my grandfather. He passed away when I was young, and in this dream his chair, which sat in the corner of my room, would be on fire. Behind the flaming chair I had a stuffed animal that I really loved. I would cry because the stuffed animal was burning too. My grandfather would then come and comfort me, telling me that everything was fine. I would wake up only to see the chair rocking gently in the corner. These dreams started when I was 4, ending when I was 5. Still very weirded out by them, though in a strange way comforted. Wouldn't normally attribute dreams to any sort of paranormal occurrence, but seeing the same chair moving that I dreamt was on fire when I would wake up was incredibly strange, to say the least. The occurrences in my house got weirder, though, as I got older. 2021, I woke up one night at 3 a.m. While traditionally seen as a quote-unquote evil hour, 3 a.m. was never really something I would have been even remotely scared of prior to this incident. So with no idea of spooky things happening at this hour, I've been waking up for weeks at 3 a.m. continuously. I thought this night was no different, really. It would turn out that I would be wrong. This night was very different. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was that I couldn't fall back asleep. That's because there was an odd banging sound coming from my wall. This wall faces the side of our house outside. There's nothing on the other side by maybe just open air. It's also the second story, a good 15 feet off the ground. So the idea of an animal or a person repeatedly touching the wall and banging hard enough to be clearly heard on the other side is unlikely. The banging would which really sounded more like knocking, would just keep going, with every knock being separated by at least 2 seconds, and by it taking a mostly rhythmic pattern with bangs being every half a second. I sat up and looked around confused. I wasn't moving, so how could I be making that noise? The noise appeared to have come from maybe either inside the wall or between the wall and my bed's headboard. But it couldn't have been coming from between my bed's headboard and the wall, because the headboard was flush with the wall. Confused and mostly annoyed to be woken up, I attempted to get back to sleep. I was able to tune the sound out, but keeping your thoughts clear and focusing while your brain is trying to make you sleep is kind of difficult. Unable to successfully ignore the sound and just sleep, I got up and walked outside my room to see if the noise could be an auditory hallucination. I've experienced these occasionally, usually when falling asleep or waking up, but they're usually very quiet, like mundane noises that can be instantly halted if I do something as simple as turn over. In this case, when walking outside my room, the sound got quieter as I left, then louder as I returned, like a real noise would. Remaining confused, I returned to bed, and after about half of an hour, the sound stopped. I fell back asleep, and that morning I woke up and told some of my friends what had happened. They weren't sure really what to make of it. After hoping for some plausible explanation from my friends, but receiving only reassurances that my house must be haunted, I just returned to my room to do some investigating myself. So I went over to the headboard on the side where the tapping had been. I tried to look for anything that could have caused this noise. Unfortunately, I just found nothing. Got onto the bed and tried to shake it a little bit by rolling around, see if my own movements had caused the noise despite me being still and the noise still going. This was also not the case, as moving on my head did not cause my headboard to create any similar noise. Finally, I got off the bed and went to look behind the headboard. Upon pulling the headboard back slightly, I was met with a loud cracking sound like splintering wood and a whoosh sound. The headboard was undamaged. Nothing had been there, nor had anything moved. I was incredibly confused and mildly scared, but since this hasn't occurred this way again, well, the next notable strange experience was in early October 2021. There's a white cabinet that we were getting rid of that we had to put in our garage while we figured out what to do with it. My dad's inside the house, and I was waiting in the garage to carry the cabinet out with him. While I was waiting, I was just sorting some recycling when a knocking noise started up again, similar to the last one. Just like the last one, it was also continuous. But this time it was harder to determine where it was coming from. Took my phone out, tried to record the noise, but it was too quiet for my phone camera to pick up. This sound once again persisted, but as I ignored it, it eventually faded away. In 2023, I'd been woken up one morning by a similar knocking sound in my room once again, coming from the same wall that had woken me up in 2021. It was 8 in the morning, and I assumed that somebody was outside and hammering. Tried to ignore the sound and go back to sleep, only for me to be unable to. The sound was loud, and I would hear about 6 to 8 knocks in a row, followed by silence for 10 seconds before they would resume. Thought nothing of it until the sound changed walls. The knocking went from outside the wall of the house to the wall separating my room from my sister's room. It became louder. My first thought was that somehow my sister was pranking me. I sat up and kept listening, but also realized that she wouldn't do that. My family would be quite upset to be woken by my sister pounding on a wall at 8 in the morning as a joke. Trying my best to ignore the sound, I lay back down again. I wasn't allowed to ignore it, apparently, and the knocking stopped, and in turn, on the back of my neck, I felt a finger touch the top of my neck and trace its way down to my shoulders before stopping. Needless to say, I didn't go back to sleep that morning. Footsteps when nobody's awake, Slamming doors and other strange sounds continued to be a staple of my experience alone at home, or at night even, with no explanation. At one point, I even left for college, only for me to return home for my sister, who never believed in any of the paranormal. She told me that from my empty room, she had been hearing knocking, banging, footsteps, and other strange sounds in the middle of the night. My family has no pets, no history of animals in the walls at all, no electrical issues, no loud pipes, and no other similar sources that might cause such sounds. I am by nature a skeptical person. It is entirely possible that all of my experiences regarding strange sounds could be auditory hallucinations or misidentification of sounds that are outside my home. There are logical explanations that could be forced into every scenario I've experienced, even the ones with my sister. But try as I might, I can't make them logically fit myself. I'm not sure what I believe, other than that I can't explain what I've experienced. The theater. Someone is in the mezzanine. Historical theaters in general are full of energy. Actors, staff, and people are in and out constantly. A place of drama, happiness, and everything in between. I could practically write a book about what goes on in this theater. Worked here over 10 years as the usher manager. I've heard many accounts and many stories of the paranormal. Always had experiences while working there. This theater in particular was built in the 1920s next to a historical Spaniard Catholic mission. This is one story. This particular night, the theater was hosting a play. We weren't expecting a full house, so we decided to close the mezzanine. For those who are not familiar, that would be considered the balcony. We got close to about 700 patrons out of a typical full house of 1,300. We roped off the stairs to the balcony prior to the show. And keep in mind, stage crew is always observing the audience as well as our lighting staff, who's in the spot booth, which is accessed by the balcony. I used to do that job. About 45 minutes into the show, I get a radio call from backstage that there's somebody sitting center of the balcony. They need to be escorted down for their safety, as we didn't have any ushers up there. So I sent 2 ushers up and they found nobody. All emergency exits were secure. During the intermission for the show, I checked with the spot crew and said that they didn't see anybody either, but they did hear the radio call. Did a quick walkthrough, found a single seat center of the balcony in a down position, as if somebody was sitting there. Put the seat up, headed down the stairs, waiting for the show to begin again. The show began, and about 15 minutes in, I get a radio call from backstage. Someone sitting in the center of the balcony again. Radio to our spot crew. They said a man is sitting there. The spot booth has a large window where they can see the center of the balcony. All I can think of is, damn, this person doesn't get it that closed. I personally head up to escort the patron down into the main house. I grab my flashlight and I go up to the balcony. I see a man sitting in that seat. All I can make out is a fedora and a beard. I turn on my flashlight, facing down, and walk toward this person. As I approach the seat, this person looks over to me and fades away as I got to the seat. I was startled, but not afraid. This was a common thing. So I headed out of the seated area into the balcony hall that was lit. I looked up and to my right and I saw the same man walking, well, more like floating, with a cane toward the office doors, which is also accessed by the balcony. He walked through the door, which was locked. Backstage crew thanked me on the radio as they saw me up there checking the seats. I replied, "Nobody living up here." Told them to ignore it and if they see it again. That of course spooked the rest of the staff, but they held their own until the end of the show. ripped right out of a book. The first time this happened was back when I was 7. We went on a cross-country trip and visited Yellowstone. Decided on staying in Old Faithful Inn. One afternoon, my parents let me run to the gift shop. That was while they sat on the second-floor balcony area to watch the geyser go off. On my way, I noticed a young boy no older than me at the time asking strangers if they had seen his mom. I was a bit concerned for him, so I decided to follow him a little bit down the stairs since I had to go there anyways. Though after I took my eyes off him for a second, I looked back to where he was and he was nowhere to be seen. Thought it was odd, but I didn't really bring it up with my parents considering that he may have just run out of view. Before we left the hotel to head to another room, my dad picked up a book of ghost stories based around the hotel, unaware of what I'd experienced. That night he was going to the stories and read one about a young boy who roams the second floor looking for his mother. I found the story really similar to what I'd experienced, told my parents who also thought it was weird. For years I disregarded the event until something similar happened when I was 16. At this point, I had basically decided to dabble in paranormal activity after some other experiences I had. My parents decided to take me to a cemetery in Plymouth, Massachusetts to test out some equipment I'd gotten, an EMF and spirit box. After walking through the graveyard for a bit, I noticed a particular grave that had a high EMF reading. I waited around for a bit when I noticed the wind pick up to the point where I felt like I was in a heavy storm. It was completely out of the blue, considering the day was clear and the wind free. And at that point, got a strong urge to leave as I wasn't wanted. Chose to accept the warning and head out, and that was until I felt a strong punch sensation to my gut. After that, I obviously got the hell out of there. One thing I didn't mention was that before we went to said graveyard, we picked up a book, and you guessed it. It was Ghost Stories of Plymouth. I didn't read any of it before entering the graveyard. Out of curiosity, I decided to read it when I got home, only to discover once again I had experienced something someone else had in the past. This time, it was of a tour guide that had felt the same sensation and experienced the same gusts of wind as I did in the same graveyard. With this happening twice, I'm really starting to consider if I have a knack for this kind of a thing. I do believe I have some connection with the paranormal and have tons of other stories of things I've experienced during my amateur investigations. I think I might be going crazy. I want to start by saying my intuition has always been something to note. I've always had a good one. My gut is trusty, and me and my cousin joke about how she asks me what's going to happen, and it does. I just get feelings, gut feelings, and more often than not they're true. Basically, I've been seeing things. Around 10, 11 months ago, I started seeing my ex-best friend's face everywhere. And no, it wasn't because I missed her. I didn't think about her because it was mutual, and it was because she moved schools, and it wasn't anything dramatic. I'd see her face in other people. I would think that's it, and it was her. But I'd look back and she was gone. I'd also see a few other things, but that was less common. After that, I used to have these bouts of paranoia, and I'd say I just started sobbing at night. Sometimes even day, because I felt something, and I just felt something just there watching me. For some reason, all I could do was sob. When I stopped seeing things, it was all okay for a few months. Now it's coming back in a different way. Shadow people. Or just glimpses of things that aren't there. My cat's tail when my cat's outside. A figure in the corner of my eye. My paranoia got worse. I call him Charles, one of the energies. It's in my mind he's this shadow figure with red eyes and he can't come in. He likes waiting for you, waiting for you to come out of the room, and he likes peeking in your room. He can peek through the room even if it's a space under the door. He likes waiting, and I feel like when you talk about him or write about him, he knows, and he knows about if he's summoned by, even now as I'm writing this, I'm glancing at the door. He's called Charles, and I feel like he's called Charles. Charles is the name of a man who used to live in my home a very long time ago, maybe mid-1800s. My home is that old. I don't know if that means anything, though. Yesterday, I'm just singing in the mirror, as you do when you're home alone, and I looked behind me for half a second and I saw a face, maybe 5 feet behind. It was peeking from the stair railing. For some reason, I want to say her hair was wet. Could have been really straight, but her face was dark and gray and none of her features weren't really distinguished. She was just evil, and her face was diluted or melting. I don't think it was Charles, but it shook me up, and from that moment I felt I wasn't alone. Before this moment, I kept hearing little things. I thought I was just being too aware, but this happens, and I felt something was with me. For the next hour, I proceeded to try and stay in the bathroom, door closed. Then my phone died, and I had no way of contacting my father, who was out of town. And God, then he called me. I didn't know it was possible since my phone was dead. I picked up and he said my name and it died again. I went outside, opened the door. No one was there. I kept looking outside and I felt something, and it was scary in these situations. I normally just broke down and cried. I tried not to, and I was paranoid, and it was okay. Since my dad wasn't there, I locked the gate and went in. My charger, not in its usual spot. I needed to look for my dad to took it. I don't know if it was in his room or if he took it with him. There's 2 parts of my home. They were originally one home, and some landlord split it into 2 homes. We joined them together, but yeah, regardless, there's 2 parts. I sleep in the other side of the house, and the only one to sleep in this side, actually, so I'm fairly alone. Which might be a good thing for anything trying to haunt me. But where I'm going with this is that I was looking for my charger. Maybe on the other side of the home. And as I get closer to going there, my left ear started ringing, and I felt like I was, getting a warning not to go. Went back to my room, and my ear felt better. 2 hours later, my dad comes in furious, saying how I locked the gate. He kept asking why I did that, and how he was stuck outside without his front door key and the gate was locked from the inside, and how a neighbor had to let him in. He was calling me, but I never picked up, and obviously I couldn't tell him why. I've kind of tried to about these things, and he's always chose to ignore it, like most of the things I say. I always wrote it off as a mental thing. Always, I never really believed in, the paranormal stuff. But lately I've come to the possibility that maybe it's more than just that. Every time I told my mother, however, she said it was the devil playing tricks on me. She's quite Christian, whole family is. I have to play along like I believe, but I'm a deist. Back to the point, she's also superstitious. I suppose she went to this special lady who has special knowledge of this stuff. First one said it was my imagination. Went to another and she gave me a token to sleep with in my pillow. That way I could be protected. As I've tried to help, but the mental health support is rubbish. No doctor here specializes in it here, and I'm sorry, but I'm not doing talk therapy over the phone for something like this. Thought I'd come here. I wanted to ask, do you think I'm seeing spirits? And is there something in my home, or am I crazy? Something called my name. An incident occurred when I was younger that stuck with me to this day. At the time of this event, I would have been 8 or 9 years old. my younger brother, 5 or 6 years old. We had decided we would camp in the backyard of our house in a tent for the night. It must have been the weekend. No school, no worries. For the sake of the story, I'll call myself Steve and my brother Harry. After a long night of playing spotlight and hide-and-seek in the dark, we decided to finally go to sleep in a tent that we pitched earlier in the afternoon. Bringing a Nerf gun, each with us for protection, I don't remember taking very long to, fall asleep. Fast forward a few hours, I woke up feeling a bit cold. I realized I must have kicked my sleeping bag off. So I pull it back up, get comfy again, and start going back to sleep. That's when I hear something, kind of faint, but I don't think too much of it. Then again, it's getting slightly louder, but still not quite clear. The sound then stops for a moment until clear as day I hear a voice whisper, "Steve." Completely freaked out, I immediately push my brother and whisper, "Harry, is that you? Are you messing with me?" No response, except a bit of snoring, but I'm still not convinced he's not playing around. I decide to try and sleep again and almost immediately hear another "Steve," but this sounded really close this time. I was a little annoyed at this point, so I sit up and just stare at Steve, waiting to catch him in the act. That's when I heard my name being called again, but this time the voice comes from directly behind my right shoulder. Tried a couple of times to wake Harry to no avail. As usual, he sleeps like a rock. Giving up and being completely freaked out, I grabbed my Nerf gun, hid my head underneath my pillow, and covered my ears with the pillow until I'd eventually fallen asleep. I asked Harry in the morning about what had happened. He seemed to not know anything had happened. The story's a bit all over the place, as I'm not really great at articulating, but this event stuck with me to this day. I was 8-ish, and now I'm 26, and something I'll never forget. What do I do? Weird ghost. I've been pretty freaked out. I've had this ghost that I think I used to call the Black Man. Black when I was a kid. I remember nothing according to my parents. But I had the Black Man in my closet who had 2 kids. Me and his kids used to play together. Once, according to my mom and my cousin's mom, my cousin came over and we complained that the Black Man wouldn't let us play with the kids. Even with all the more creepy stuff happening, my mom would wake up with my toys' sound being on, even after the batteries were out. Hardly remember the story. I think she heard banging or something horrific. She said she grabbed me and took me to a room and locked the door. Apparently, it got rough. I have no clue if this corresponds, but I remember playing Minecraft and in single-player a black figure almost 3 to 10 minutes into playing, staring at me from ground level. It was brushed off, but I'm not stupid. I remember it clear as day. It was a player figure. This next story happened yesterday. Me and my mom were doing something late, and out of the corner of both our eyes, we saw a black gust. Almost. It was like a tad bit of a fog until it focused. I didn't think much of it until she replied, "Did you see that?" Freaked me out. She said something about a spiritual orb. Who knows? I'm mostly wondering if this ghost is back or whatever. I want to know if it's peaceful. I want to coexist. Some are saying all ghosts are demons and not to interact, and could it be true? What do I do? Random experience I've never shared before. So this happened when I was about 7. My brother was 2. We lived in a house with 2 stories. Our bedrooms were on opposite ends of the upstairs hall with the bathroom in the middle of them. One morning I woke up before the sun. The house was quiet, but there was a soft voice and a light coming from underneath my brother's door. I decided to go see. He was up so early, and threw off my blanket, feeling a weird tingling sensation slide through me as I got up and headed down the hall to his room. I opened the door and I found him playing with his little Jurassic Park action figures with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. Snuck up behind him and tossed his blanket over his head. He threw it off and turned to face me, giggling. As soon as he looked at me, his face changed from happy and laughing to look like he'd seen a ghost. He looked almost like on the verge of screaming, so I quickly asked him what was wrong. He said, "Why are you see-through?" He backed away from me. I looked down, now scared, and didn't see anything odd about my hands, feet, and legs and arms, but he still looked scared. I just told him, "Listen, go back to bed, this is just a dream." And he listened. Went back to my bedroom, turned off the light, and rushed into bed as fast as I could, still uneasy about what just happened. As soon as I lay down back in my favorite sleeping position, I felt an odd click, like a Lego snapping into place almost. Then I fell asleep quickly. This hasn't happened since, but my brother, now 10, brought it up to me the other day, saying that it was this weird dream that he had when he was little. So if we both remembered it, what was it? My experience that still haunts me. It happened when I was a kid. My parents and I had moved to this apartment complex back in 1986. It was built in the 40s during World War II. The basement had a fallout shelter installed and a fallout room. There were gas masks, tin cans of food, old World War II posters of enlisting. I was about 2 years old at the time that we moved in. Didn't start to have experiences until I was about 5 years old. Some experiences involved my toys going on by themselves, dolls in spots I didn't leave them, my radio turning off and on, to which my parents' explication was that I was doing it but didn't remember, or that it was quote-unquote just my imagination. That all changed one night. I had 2 windows on the side of my bed, and this is relevant to the story. The right one would open and stay open with no problems, but the one on the left was broken. It would not stay open, and we would have to stick a board to the window for it to remain open. One night I had been woken up to this loud bang, which scared the absolute crap out of me, causing me to sit straight up in bed. As I'm sitting there, my eyes are trying to adjust to the room, looking around to see if something had just fallen, and if so, where. Then I heard it again. Bang! It was on the side of me, so I look over in the direction to see what it was, but didn't see anything that could have made the noise. That is until I see the left window, the window that needs a board to stay open, slowly opening up, and opening by itself. I sat there frozen, trying to make sense to see what I was seeing, if I was actually seeing what I was seeing. I couldn't do anything but sit there in disbelief and attempt to close my eyes tightly for 10 seconds because 5-year-old me, maybe it's a bad dream, and closing my eyes tightly is what I'd always do to end a bad dream. Still do to this day. As soon as my eyes opened, I see the window fully open. Then bang, the window slammed shut. I realized at that moment that I was fully awake. And then the window starts to open again. Only this time it's opening a little faster than last time. And same as last time, it would open all the way and slam shut. It happened again and again and again, each time opening up a little bit faster than the last time and slamming shut. Bang, bang, bang. It was as if somebody was opening it fully, letting it go in order to slam shut. Then the window, flies all the way up and stays open. Then I hear the most horrible, evil, sadistic laugh, like a cackle right in front of me. And that was enough for me to finally move. I fly off the bed, getting tangled in my sheets and comforter. I managed to get the comforter off of me, but I still have the sheets wrapped around me. That didn't stop me from hauling ass all the way to my parents' bedroom screaming bloody murder. My screaming ended up waking up my parents, so they were already awake when I get to their bedroom. Trying to explain to them what happened, but I had seen and told them about the cackling. My mother was just the sort of comforting parent, trying to calm me down as best as she could, telling me that I just had a really bad nightmare, and that my nightmare continued when I was semi-awake because I was sort of half asleep, half awake. And I was persistent. I kept repeating myself over and over and over, telling them about the window opening and shutting by itself and the cackling. My father, who is the no-nonsense parent, was extremely upset that I'd woken him up and said, "Enough, Amanda. It is just a bad dream. Come on, I'll show you. There's nothing in your room to be afraid of. And your mother's right. You probably dreamed the whole thing, so come on, let's go." My father and I head back to the bedroom, my little hand clenching his hand tightly. We go into my room, my comforter still on the floor. My father goes to pick it up, and when he does, he glances over at the windows and sees the left window is still open, wide open. Nothing in it to hold it open, just wide open. My father goes over to the window, looks at the window, then back at me and says, "Did you open this?" I tell him, desperately trying to get him to believe me, "No, Dad, I told you. It kept opening and slamming by itself." My father, frustrated, cranky, and highly annoyed at this point, tells me, "Windows don't open by themselves. Probably got stuck when you opened it." My father reaches over to make sure I didn't stick anything in the window to keep it open. As soon as he stuck his hand in, about to pull his hand away, the window slammed shut, nicking his hand in the process, sort of making it unable to pull it out of the window. My father, who was still trying to make sense of the situation, was suddenly spooked and creeped out. I spent the night in my parents' room, in my sleeping bag on their bedroom floor that night. After that night, the activity seemed to amplify. There's stories for another time. It's been almost 40 years, and I still have nightmares about that night. The window opening and shutting and the cackling. The fear and my little 5-year-old heart pounding in my chest. One of the worst experiences I've ever had, until I encountered the Hat Man. This happened 5 years ago. I'm only ready to talk about it now. This experience happened when I was 21, 5 years ago. It's something that has played on my mind since, but I've never talked about it. I went to dinner with a friend from university. Let's call her Amy. We had 1 glass of red wine each with dinner. I was staying at her house that night, and by the time we got back, I was totally sober. It was 1 glass of wine with dinner anyways. Never even felt tipsy. Amy was in her ensuite brushing her teeth, and I was laying in her double bed on my side. I was facing the bathroom that Amy was in. All of a sudden, I felt the very distinct feeling of a hand with long nails going down my back, from my neck to my bottom. It felt like a real hand. I could feel the long nails of all the fingers, and it tickled in the same way a person's hand would. I spun around in shock and faced the other side of the bedroom, and for a split second, I saw a tall, middle-aged man facing me with eyes boring into mine. It was the most uncomfortable, unnatural thing I've ever felt. He was perfectly aligned with the far wall of the bedroom. I saw him about 5 meters away, so no explanation for the human hand scratching down my back. I was crying and shouted for Amy even though she was just next door. I told her what happened. I was super emotional at this point, and then she started crying. I asked why, and she told me that she felt like someone was watching her from the corner of her room for months. She even showed me texts to her boyfriend where she'd tell him that she was struggling to sleep because she felt like she was being watched. A well-known male serial killer, in London at least, preyed on young men who used to live 2 doors down from Amy's house. I didn't know this until I looked it up after. It's taken me years to process this because of, well, how real it was. I felt the hand scratch me and I saw the man, and this stuff is real. Thoughts of this experience. I've been having nightmares, really vivid dreams ever since I started SSRI and FIN. But something different happened last night. Around 3 a.m. I woke up after a nightmare. I tried to go back to sleep, and like 5 minutes later I opened my eyes and I felt my arms numb. I couldn't move. I looked at the window and saw these weird writings on it. Same ones I've seen before another night when I had a nightmare. Same exact writing. This time I couldn't move. When I looked toward my closet, the door was open. I saw this really tall girl, like 7 feet tall. I could only see her eyes and a bit of her frizzy hair. I got scared and closed my eyes. But when I opened them again, she was right beside me, just staring. She looked human, normal face and everything, just really tall. I wanted to scream so bad, but I literally couldn't, so I shut my eyes again. After a few minutes, I felt like something shifted. My eyes started moving behind my eyelids. When I opened them again, I was suddenly out in town. People were just walking around. I remembered some stuff I saw about lucid dreaming, so I did that thing where you pinch your nose. I could breathe through it, so I knew I was dreaming. I started walking and thinking about a car. Then a red Ford appeared in front of me. I got in and started driving. But when I looked in the mirror, I saw her, the tall girl. She jumped at me and put her hand over my mouth, and her nails were painted white. Then everything just went black. I woke up again around 6:49 a.m. and saw the writing on the window again. But this time, I could move, and she wasn't there. That's the end of tonight's stories. And just to address some people's comments, sorry about the audio inconsistencies. I'm slacking a bit. I'm not slacking for no reason. I've been sick for like a couple months now. If anybody knows anything about invasive aspergillosis, let me know, because I'm at a loss. Sweet dreams.